So like I mentioned, like these videos again are for salespeople in different verticals, and I think both of us come from an advertising background. I actually have never heard the story of how you got into sales and advertising sales in the first place. So maybe we can start there.
I had worked for I had worked for a startup, an internet startup, selling software as a service, and we what we sold was online ordering solutions for people. So if you wanted to order, you use Seamless. Everyone in New York uses Seamless.
Right.
Seamless would get you a list of every deli and pizza shop and restaurant within X miles of where you're at. What our tactic was to sell the entire chain. So we wanted to sell Subway into a corporate sponsorship. So we actually had a pilot program with Subway in 2007 and rolled out to 100 stores in the New York City area. And from there, we sold this deal into Five Guys, and we sold deals into other places. The gestation of that sale is very long. So even when you approach people, you have to approach. If you approached it from the bottom up, you'd never get anywhere. The strategy we found that worked for us was to email the top level client, email the CEO first, and of course he's not going to go, "Hey, you got a deal, buddy." He's going to say, if you're lucky, this is interesting, but I'm not ready to look at this yet. Let me pass you to my CMO,
right.
and or whomever the next person was. That CMO would take you seriously because you'd been handed to him from his boss. So we talked to the CMO and say, "Hey, marketing wise, we can get you more clients and blah blah blah. You can do this and that." He'd go out, "Guys, I like this solution a lot. Again, if you're lucky and you did your job well." He goes, "Hey, I like this a lot, but this let's see if this is even technically possible with our website." He'd pass you to the CTO, same story. "David, I like this. It's technically possible. Let's see if operationally on the ground we can actually do this sort of thing." Pass to the COO, right? So you get buy-in from basically 3 high-level C-suite people that say, "Yes, we can do that." It goes back to the CEO. The CEO says, "Yeah, this sounds like something we can test. Let's test it out in 10 stores in New Jersey. And if that works, we'll roll it out to 100 stores in the Northeast. If that works, we'll roll it out to 1,000 stores nationwide." So it's a long gestation, a long sales cycle, right. And they all wanted integration into their software, and everyone has disparate computer softwares and disparate POS softwares. So while we were selling a really valuable product, and there was a lot of interest, it was in 2007, really at the advent of smartphones. Our first product was selling order by text. Okay. You would save your favorite order, your turkey sandwich at Subway with cheese, just how you like it, and that would be order number 1. You'd text the number 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, whatever your special number was, to the text short code, and then it would send the order to the restaurant via fax machine. Obviously, things needed to evolve and innovate, and that innovation process and the integration process was such a long gestation that we had basically sold up what we could possibly execute on our pipeline. So if we had 4 deals in the works, it might take us a year to get those launched on the dev side. So my job became not necessary at the time because we couldn't sell anymore, and we couldn't develop in time to fulfill the existing business that we had. So it was a little shift in the strategy. I became unnecessary for what I was doing, selling local stores and things like that. So I called my buddy and I said, "Hey, is there anything at Metro?" He goes, "Yeah, come here." And they said, "David, you have a great history selling to restaurants. We want you to build restaurants for us." Restaurants was a completely developmental list for Metro. They had basically $0 on it, and it was a slog to sell through. I was on foot, talking to restaurant managers, talking to bartenders. "Is Steve here?" "Who's Steve?" "He's owns this place." "I own this place." "Great, you have a second to talk? Come back later." Okay, and it was a restaurant job, So even if you sold them a deal, even if you get a second to talk while they're not serving customers or managing or doing something like that, they didn't have any money. If they did have money, they didn't have an ad, so you had to create the ad for them.
Right.
And when they paid you by check. And it's not like they had terms that they were approved on, so you had to. Part of your job was just picking up $200 checks from restaurants every now and then. So sold that through for a couple years, and it was a slog. And I actually I left there, leveraged some of my experience to get a job with a travel magazine. Travel magazine was valuable. It was a single owner publisher, and it was his baby. So we published 12 times a year, and every single month, get in a page, was a huge win. If you did well, everyone was excited. He was super generous and very happy. But then the next month, back to 0. Right. And if you missed the month, it's not like you missed the month and the corporate budget's going to shift and we'll look for it later. It was a disaster to his bank account, and he wasn't budgeted for up and down and up and down and up and down. He always wanted constant growth. So it was a tense situation from month to month. But he had great relationships client direct relationships in the travel industry, and I got to my territory that I managed was some accounts in New York, Eastern Canada, Vancouver, Montreal, Mexico, so Mexico City, and Dubai, Middle East. So you may not know the work week begins in the Middle East on Sundays. They work Sunday through Thursday, and they're roughly 8 hours ahead, right? So they have Fridays and Saturdays off. So if I wanted to transact business in Dubai, and I had a rep who worked for me there, if I wanted to transact business in Dubai on the beginning of their work week, I had to be sending emails at roughly 11:30 p.m. on a Saturday night, so that it's in the inbox by 8 p.m. on their Sunday, which is their Monday morning,
right,
so that I can get a response back. And when you're doing business internationally, especially when there's that big of a lag in the time, the time difference, you can really only accomplish one good message a day. Right. You send out your bullets. You send out your bullets with 5 things that need answered. They'll send it back to you 8 hours later with the 5 things. And it goes on like that. So business moves very slowly that way, unless you can have phone calls, unless you're willing to stay up and work from midnight until 8 a.m. and then start your New York job. So had some good experience there and leveraged that experience to begin with Fast Company. Had some good client relationships. And travel was not a big category for Fast Company, shockingly so.
Right.
And Fast Company is a business magazine, but after 2 years and the success we had, I can make an extremely strong case that travel is basically endemic to Fast Company, especially given the buckets of money. The buckets of money in the travel category are leisure and business. And leisure is like me and you taking our families on vacation, in which case we know how much the ticket costs. We know what the airline, we know which airports to fly out of for cheaper flights.
Right.
We know what the Uber is going to cost us, or the taxi cab, or if it's cheaper to take a subway. And we know what the hotel costs every single night. If we're going to South by for business, no idea what it costs. Airline could cost $1,000. I don't know.
Right.
The hotel room probably costs $1,000. It doesn't matter to me because that's just what it costs. So the bucket for business travel money is, I would say, 7 times what it is for leisure travel money.
Right.
So we were able to build some really strong relationships at Fast Company, do some really sophisticated proposals, and be super creative and be leaders in thought when it comes to putting out new media, when it comes to putting out smart ideas that are valuable to the client. A lot of upper funnel stuff.
Right.
A lot of upper funnel stuff.
So when you moved into that, because that's interesting. That first of all, it's kind of an interesting transition, but I'm sure it actually sounds like a nice way to kind of ramp up, in terms of your sales skill and acumen across the different platforms, right? Because I think you had mentioned this to me, once you got to Fast Company, and I'm sure the other platforms since, it can be a little bit of an intricate sale, and there's a lot of things involved.